When a lance of mechs flying the banner of the self-described Black Hats landed on Skalaval around 3016, there was little to suggest that it was going to be more than a run-of-the-mill raid by periphery pirates. A pair of Shadowhawks, a Trebuchet, and a Whitworth marched on the Kuritan planet's militia, scattering the hastily called troops in every direction. The pirates expected, and were well on their way to an easy raid on a major city's commercial district when they discovered the locals weren't going to meekly hand over their valuables. In fact, they had used the brief battle with the militia to ferret away everything of value that they could in order to send the pirates away empty-handed. Unable to fill their mechs' hands with loot, the Black Hat Lance retreated back to their dropship, and the locals breathed a beleaguered sigh of relief and started to count the dead and clean up the mess. Unfortunately, the assumption that the pirates would give up and leave the planet proved disastrously wrong. On February 2nd, while much of the city was celebrating Candlemas in the city's various churches and cathedrals, the pirates returned to exact their revenge. The mechs of the Lance marched into the city a second time. Instead of seeking out riches, the Black Hats brought inferno missiles in their launch tubes. They intended to teach the locals a painful lesson about defiance by firing their missiles into the various houses of worship and prevented any escape. Their rampage continued over days until word of the 9th Rasselhog regulars jumping into the system forced the pirates to make their escape. The tale of the Candlemas massacre traveled far and became a common example of how brutal periphery pirates can be if you don't pony up with the loot when they arrive at your doorstep. The story also unfortunately smeared the reputation of the WTH Whitworth due to its use in the massacre. Of course, by this point, the 40-ton battle mech had already been in use for 4 centuries, so it had plenty of other tales to work from. Also, we have to consider that it's not the fault of the mechs, but those who use them to turn Kuritan civilians into charcoal. On a brighter and only marginally less flammable note, today we're going to spend some time digging in under the hood with the Whitworth so that we can hopefully build some appreciation for the uncommon yet well-aged war machine. Stick around and let's get into it. For an old Whitworth, Oathborn wasn't the best mech, but it wasn't without its strengths. It had a pretty respectable amount of long-range firepower for its weight, and I intended to put it to use. Shifting a bit to my left, I steadied my breathing as I waited for her to come into view over the grassy hills running down toward me. When a reverse-legged machine appeared in the distance, I pressed my thumb down the moment the ring of the sensor lock sounded in my helmet. 20 missiles obediently leapt out, screaming downrange to track the rapidly approaching target. Errant's Honor, Shrapnel Number 21, by Zachary Watson. Though often grouped with battle mechs that stomped their way through the Age of War, the 40-ton Whitworth was actually a product of the post-reunification war New Order. By the time the first production runs of the Scout Mech marched off the assembly lines in 2610, the Great Houses had joined the Star League, which had been formally created in 2571. It was within this calm after the storm that the Whitworth company based on Dieron decided to toss their hat into the battle mech ring. Their proposed 40-ton design would be advertised as a middle step between the speed and agility of light mechs like the Wasp and Stinger and heavier medium mechs like the Phoenix Hawk and Dervish. The WTH-1 Whitworth blueprints reflected a sacrifice of speed in favor of improved durability and offensive power. Constructed from an in-house developed Whitworth Type 1 frame wrapped around an LTV-160 Fusion engine, the Whitworth was only able to reach a top speed of 64 km per hour. Its agility was improved through the installation of 4 Whitworth jet-lift jump jets, which allowed for leaps of up to 120 meters. While the 464 movement profile wasn't terrible for a heavier medium mech at the time, at 40 tons it was a considerable disadvantage. To make up for the fact that the Whitworth would be taking more incoming fire as an easier-to-hit target, 8 tons of Duralex light plate armor was added to the mech, which provided 128 points of protection. For comparison, the 40-ton Vulcan VL-2T carried just 5 tons of armor, and the CLNT-2-3T Clint carried 4.5 tons. However, keep in mind, both of those mechs would move at a 6.9 movement speed due to their more powerful engines. In a somewhat uncharacteristic move for battle mechs of the era, 14 single heatsinks were added to the Whitworth to keep it running cool and to keep it dangerous. It was all in service to the weapon's loadout and the ability to use those jump jets consistently. Now this is where we have to get back into the history a bit, because the original Whitworth had a different loadout than most would recognize from the much more common Succession Wars WTH-1 Whitworth. The WTH-1S that marched off the assembly lines on Davion carried 3 standard medium lasers split between the arms and the mech's head, along with a pair of short-range missile 6 racks split between the side torsos and each fed from their own 1 ton of ammunition. Though the Whitworth had been envisioned as a heavy scout support mech, reports quickly began to filter back to the company that mech warriors, particularly those from within the Draconis Combine, were rushing into close combat with foes in almost kamikaze-like attacks on targets. While I appreciate a good glorious final charge as much as anyone, the Whitworth company looked at it with concern, as high rates of loss for the mech would reflect poorly on its reputation with possible future buyers. In order to dissuade this behavior, a redesign was called for which swapped out the short-range missile launchers and the 4 extra heatsinks in favor of a pair of Longbow 10 long-range missile launchers in the same side torso locations. This variant, designated the WTH-1, would become the standard for the vast majority of Whitworths spotted in action throughout the Succession Wars. With just 10 single heatsinks, the Whitworth-1 did need to manage its heat, but being forced into a mid- and long-range skirmisher role with the LRMs, this was a little easier to accomplish. The 2 LRM-10 launchers could be fired while on the run and not end up in the red. Only when forced into short range would heat become an issue with the use of the 3 medium lasers. Choices would have to be made. The threat of having 1 ton of LRM ammunition on each side torso was present, but provided good motivation for the Mechwarrior to fire it off at targets quickly before closing in. Didn't help him though. When the C8s on his legs went off, the charges blew one leg completely off and shattered the internal support in the other. The explosion took 2 more suits with it, both too slow to jump away, and the mech fell face forward to crush another one. The Whitworth launched a salvo of its missiles, and someone screamed out, "Swarms!" I looked up to see the volley of missiles work its way up my side of the road, some missiles dropping down on each of the shallow firing pits as the salvo passed over. My foxhole was no exception. A missile landed several meters away from where I was holed up, and the explosion threw me out of the hole, hurling me meters away right on top of the body of another dead grunt. All the Guts, None of the Glory. Combat Equipment by Nick Marsala. While the original 1S short-range missile variant of the Whitworth saw decades of production before the shift over to the WHT-1 variant, it suffered from the previously mentioned tendency to not return to base after missions. The company sold it to everyone from the SLDF to periphery nations. More specifically, the Whitworth was popular amongst the RimWorld's Republic, which really leaned into the SRM variant, often filling the mech's ammo bins with Inferno rounds, which could quickly turn any battle into an out-of-control conflagration. As with most new mech designs, the Whitworth had its share of issues. It was reported that close-range bouts with the SRM variant placed higher than expected stress on the frame, as excessive twisting and turning while on the run, along with frantic jump jet use, caused the hip and leg actuators to wear faster than expected and then fail entirely. An unexpected high percentage of the early Whitworth mech warriors ended up face down on the battlefield wondering what happened. The issue became an interesting opportunity for mech techs to create a Franken-mech design, and it wasn't uncommon to see field refit Whitworths with leg assemblies from other bipedal battle mechs. Hard times hit the Whitworth company following the Ameris coup, when the Whitworth production lines on Davion were destroyed by RimWorld's Republic forces in 2776. With the supply of new mechs and repair parts cut off, the existing Whitworths across the inner sphere and periphery had to endure. It was reported that fewer than 300 functional Whitworths survived the first two succession wars. But of course, that was just a best guess, considering just how widespread the Whitworth's use was. Thankfully, in 3035, Whitworth Specialty Manufacturing was founded with the express purpose of creating repair and replacement parts for the mech. It was part of a larger deal involving the Draconis Combine, Comstar, and their creation of the Free Rosselhog Republic. This breathed new life into the classic Whitworth and prevented the mech's extinction. Cyril knew that if he could keep the Cappies focused on the Awesome's threat, perhaps it might buy his lancemates enough time to get the Duke to safety. There was no way he could outrun these mechs. That Vindicator and its Whitworth partner could clock over 60 kph in a dead run, but so far Wicked Witch only topped out at around 52, and running the whole way would expose her less than impressive rear armor. Assault mechs could take a lot of punishment, but they certainly weren't invincible, and sooner or later the Awesome's armor would fail. Missiles from the Whitworth and Griffin arced white contrails toward Peacemaker. A few of the warheads hit home, not enough to knock Skylar off balance, but the rest fell short and exploded around the Treb's feet. The three remaining light mechs swarmed Cyril's lancemates. I Value Target, Counterattack Battlecore Anthology by Philip A. Lee. Before we go too far down the timeline, we do need to cover one other rare variant of the Whitworth designated the WTH-0. It was first spotted in 2754 and it appears to be a sub-variant of the SRM-1S variant that had 14 single heatsinks and the twin SRM-6 launchers. The only change from the norm was the replacement of the left-arm medium laser with a flamer. This war crime edition of the Whitworth was exclusively fielded by the Ameris Dragoons, who naturally used it to settle disagreements at roughly 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. These matte black painted Whitworths were most often seen running into cities and urban areas and setting up cool slow-motion shots with burning buildings behind them. On a more positive note, let's see here. Yes, over the course of the Succession Wars, the Whitworth found itself a niche as a buddy fire support battlemech alongside other medium and even heavy battlemechs like the Wolverine and Rifleman, particularly among House Davion and Draconis Combine units. While not always able to keep up with lighter mechs and unable to hit as hard as fellow mediums, the Whitworth ended up in that curiously hard to nail down spot where so many other 40-ton mechs exist. The Whitworth's torso swiveled to face him. IR showed its lasers powering up, a score of long-range warheads loading into its paired missile launchers. A few seconds later, the Clint took the bait. The Griffin, however, continued on through the forest to chase after the rest of Cyril's lance. And just like that, Cyril found himself facing 3 Capellan mechs bearing down on him all at once. 3 Capellan mechs that weren't chasing after his Duke. I Value Target, Counterattack Battlecore Anthology by Philip A. Lee. It would do the Whitworth a disservice if we didn't take time to appreciate 2 of the most famous mech warriors who called the mech their own. Gavro Kent and Marco Hallman started out their careers in the DCMS and forged a friendship that could have lasted had it not been for a mutual romantic interest in a woman who ended up choosing Hallman. This rivalry over her affection led not just to a breakdown in their friendship between the 2 Whitworth mech warriors, but actually forged a bitter rivalry which grew out of control. Eventually, Gavro Kent was drummed out of the DCMS on charges of insubordination after a raid on Eadeh 4 went sour. Deserved or not, Gavro took his loss extremely personally and chose to defect, leaving the Draconis Combine and offering his talents to the Federated Sons. This could have easily been the end of the story had Kent's 5th Syrtis unit and Hallman's 2nd Yeron not been posted in the same region of the Fed Sons Combine border. Fate offered no quarter as the 2 former friends ended up facing each other down on the same battlefield in 3023. Their units clashed multiple times on Bergman's planet, and Kent made a point of ruthlessly taunting Hallman across open comm links, baiting him into a direct confrontation. Eventually, Hallman gave in to temptation and broke from his unit, making a beeline in his Whitworth toward Kent in his. The resulting brawl became history's most famous one-on-one Whitworth fight, with missiles and lasers going off in every direction. Gavro Kent's skills had developed beyond Marco Howman's, and it looked like the end was near for the combined Mechwarrior, especially after Howman's Whitworth took a significantly damaging hit to the head. His life was likely only saved by the eventual arrival of the rest of the Davion Lance, which forced Gavro Kent onto the retreat. Though the two would trade shots in various other battles, neither of the former friends ever came so close to ending things as they did on Bergman's planet. Gavro Kent stayed with the 5th Syrtis and fought in the fateful strike by Macaron's armored cavalry on Sarna, which left the 5th Syrtis broken. Kent survived the fight along with his Whitworth and ended up retiring after the War of 3039. The two rivals would meet up one last time after a seriously ailing Howman sent word to Kent that he wanted to make amends before he shuffled the mortal coil. A more introspective and calm Gavro Kent traveled to the Draconis Combine, and the two former friends buried the hatchet. Curiously, neither of them could remember the name of the love interest who had played such a pivotal role in their lives. Well, now it's our turn. Hardly a fair fight, but neither was the Confederation's forced occupation of the compact. Cassandra selected a Whitworth, close enough that she could target it by eye, and struck out with 2 large lasers and her Gauss rifle. The lasers flashed brightly in the darkness, cutting deeply into the armor along the Whitworth's right arm and left side. Her Gauss slugs smashed into the right side, shattering armor plates and crushing the LRM missile launcher mounted there, robbing it of half its long-ranged firepower. The Whitworth never had the chance to return fire, her savage attack throwing it roughly to the ground. Threads of Ambition by Lauren L. Coleman. While the Whitworth would not receive a fancy Helm memory core revamp like many other classic Succession War designs, Whitworth Specialty Manufacturing was able to scrabble together an upgrade kit at their factory on Benjamin. Of course, when we say upgrade, that is a word that would end up sparking some debate even at the time. The removal of the 2 arm-mounted standard medium lasers to free up 2 tons of mass for the accuracy-improving Artemis IV fire control system upgrade for both LRM-10 launchers was a bold move. When Gavro Kent learned about the WTH-2 package, he was not a fan. He was reported to have said, quote, "What are they supposed to do when their ammo runs out? With only 1 laser, they're casualties in waiting." Unquote. I have to say he's not wrong in his critique of the plan. Leaving the Whitworth with just a single medium laser after 12 shots of each LRM launcher presents the mech with serious challenges should it get caught out of position. The Whitworth's lack of speed made it an easy target for lighter mechs which could swarm and cut it down without much worry. That's bad times right there. The end result of the upgrade was that it further pushed the Whitworth into the role of a 40-ton long-range fire support mech, which is something that few people wanted. Still, plans moved forward, and many of the Whitworths that still existed among Davion and Combine units in 3050 ended up receiving it. Unfortunately, it did not improve the mech's reputation. In an example of mutual independent creativity, the Whitworth was named worthless by both the AFFS and the DCMS units that had them in their ranks. The WHT-2 was another attempt to force a round peg into a square hole, and it ended up pleasing no one. By the late 3050s, the surviving Whitworths among house units started ending up in military surplus lists. Periphery nations that were always keeping an eye out for a deal nabbed them up, and the noble Whitworth found new life among the militaries of the Taurians, Marians, and others out in the wilder regions of settled space. Again, she turned the gun at the Highlander mech, which was starting to turn to face the surprise attack. Small explosions danced across the Whitworth's left arm and torso, leaving holes in the tough armor protecting the mech's portside missile launcher. This time, the enemy warrior was not taken by surprise, nor did he stagger under the assault. Instead, he turned to face the onslaught. A sharp, whooping tone ripped at Tanya's ear, indicating that the enemy had locked his weapons onto her mech. Yellow-white flame erupted from the box-like launchers affixed to the Whitworth's shoulders as 20 long-range missiles, guided by sophisticated Artemis fire control systems, roared through the night air, eager to savage her already abused mech. Shadows of War, Twilight of the Clans, Volume 6, by Thomas S. Gressman. In 3066, a new variant of the Whitworth was spotted out in Taurian space, which took a creative path in making the mech more dangerous. The WTH-1H was structurally the same as the original 1S with its 14 single heat sinks, 8 tons of standard plate armor, and 464 movement profile. Once again, the differences were found in the loadout, which saw a removal of one of the SRM-6 launchers in favor of 8 rocket launcher 10s set into the right torso. With the standard 3 medium lasers and no long-range weaponry, this was a Whitworth that really wanted to close in on its targets. The damage output could vary wildly depending upon how conservative you wanted to be with your rocket launcher use. In a perfect moment when you really wanted to delete something from the battlefield, unleashing them all could very likely do that to even heavy and assault battlemechs. It's the kind of all-out use of force that fits well with the Taurian tactical mindset. If you're looking for something a little more traditional, in 3068 a significantly upgraded Whitworth was spotted designated the WTH-2A. For the first time since the Star League, the mech saw a genuine structural upgrade in the form of endo steel and the swap over to 10 double heatsinks. The rest of the mech's basic structure was left unchanged, including its 8 tons of standard plate armor and jump jets. The 2 tons of mass earned with the use of endo steel were invested in the loadout, which leaned into a close-range, powerful scout role. The 2 standard medium lasers split between the arms were no surprise, but the 4-streak SRM-4 launchers split between the torsos offered a nasty surprise to anyone who wandered too close. All 4 fed from a single ton of case-protected ammunition, which could go quite quickly depending on how lucky the Mechwarrior is with achieving streak missile lock. The 2 final additions were a C3 computer in the center torso and an emotional support standard small laser set into the head. The WTH-2A is definitely more powerful, and as part of a C3 scouting unit, it would be the muscle to back up the lighter mechs. However, the ammunition limitation did factor into its ability to remain potent on longer missions. Overall, it's a solid little build that I would definitely consider if I were building a C3 spotting lance. Just a year later, in 3069, the WTH-3 Whitworth was spotted fielding a couple of new bells and whistles. Endosteel made its return to the mech along with 6 improved jump jets, which pushed the Whitworth's movement profile to 466. This variant was found among forces stationed in the Capellan March, and featured an unusual all-LRM-5 build, along with a head-mounted C3 computer. Each of the 4 LRM-5s fed from its own dedicated ton of ammunition, which could keep the mech firing for quite a while. Reports suggest that it was used primarily for the very niche role of clearing Capellan-laid minefields. It's an odd one, and besides a comical run where it's firing thunder LRMs all over the place, I don't think I would ever take it out to play. Cassie leaned forward to study the garden below. Fortunately, the Battlemaster's head was tipped forward. Next to its massive left foot, she saw the ornamental pond, a 3-meter hole punched through its thin scum of ice and a body floating face down in the center of it. The Whitworth descended to her right in a blaze of jump jets, crashing through the branches of a 30-meter-tall Brahma cedar, a carefully stunted version of the kilometer-tall monsters of the Tremurti Range. Snow from branches and garden surrounded the Wit in a white swirl as it settled with a flexing of its Myomer-muscled legs. As the triangular head swiveled to peer into the Battlemaster's cockpit, Cassie pressed herself back into the form-fitting seat and wished she'd thought to keep the neurohelmet for show, even though she lacked the interfaces to operate it. Hearts of Chaos by Victor Milan. It's only fair that eventually the Draconis Combine would take a more serious look at the Whitworth, and they did so in their 3070 variant designated the WTH-K. Once again, the Whitworth benefited from endo steel, but still carried 8 tons of standard armor and 10 single heatsinks. 5 improved jump jets pushed the movement profile to 465, which is great. The weapons loadout was a nod toward the original, with a pair of arm-mounted ER medium lasers and 2 multi-missile 7 launchers split between the side torsos. The 2 tons of ammunition were usually split between LRMs and SRMs to provide the mech with battlefield flexibility. The 2 biggest challenges for the Whitworth K were heat management and the ammo stocks, though the heat generation was the bigger moment-by-moment concern. Firing both ER medium lasers while on the run already sent the Mech 2 into the red, and with each MML-7 generating 4 heat, close-range battles could quickly get the Mechwarrior into trouble. It's odd since upgrading to 10 double heat sinks is doable and would have left the Whitworth K at 0 open critical locations. It really feels like a missed opportunity. If you're looking for something way beyond your typical Whitworth, there was an attempt made in 3074 to develop a cutting-edge Whitworth that would mitigate all its flaws and then some. The TWH-5S Whitworth was a refit of the WTH-2 chassis, but calling it a refit really doesn't do the mech justice. From the ground up, this is a brand new thing, starting with a composite internal structure wrapped around a 160 extra light fusion engine. To bolster the mech's 464 movement profile, a supercharger was also installed into the right torso, providing brief boosts up to 484. 10 double heat sinks were installed to keep the mech running cool, and the 8 tons of standard plate armor went untouched from the WH2 chassis. Each of the arms was given an actuator enhancement system in order to improve the aim of the pair of medium X pulse lasers, which could do their 6 damage out to 9 hexes. Between the pulse technology and the AES, that is a -3 improvement to each laser's accuracy. Each side torso was given a Streak SRM-6 launcher, but they both fed from a Case 2 protected single ton of ammunition in the right torso. Finally, a Guardian ECM suite was added to the center torso, making this our Operation Sneaky Sneak Whitworth of the day. While definitely a dangerous creature up close, the 5S lacked long-range weaponry and was vulnerable to return fire, even with the Guardian ECM squawking and filling targeting systems with garbage signals. The composite structure and XL engine also made it more challenging to survive incoming fire, and the repair costs once they scooped what's left of the Mechwarrior out of the cockpit were considerable. It was reported that it took 10 months to fully refit a Whitworth due to the extensive reworking. Available information suggested the 5S did not go into production, though a full lance was produced by the research team for testing. This variant stands as a good example of the idea that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Patterson was obviously embarrassed. Her cheeks flushed red as she tried to avoid looking the sergeant in the eye. "I think I engaged the enemy at too short a range, Sergeant Coombs." "Damn right you did," he snapped back. "You were piloting a Whitworth, Private. The bulk of your firepower is long-range missiles. You rushed into point-blank range and tried to fire. Those warheads need some range to arm. Short-range missiles don't need that. LRMs do. You were practically dancing with that charger. Chargers are all geared for short range. Hell's bells, you could have pounded Corporal Glancy into a snail's snot if you had just kept back. You'd better spend some serious time getting up to speed on mech capabilities and configurations." By Blood Betrayed, by Blaine Lee Pardoe. The newest Whitworth variant on the timeline was the WTH-2H, produced not within the Inner Sphere but by Marion Arms Incorporated out on Alphard. By the 3130s, the Marion hegemony was riding high and able to invest in significant homegrown arms production. Investment from Starcore and Graham Davis Enterprises updated the production lines on Alphard, and the call was made to update the Whitworth, which was a common and popular mech amongst the Marion hegemony armed forces. The Whitworth 2H thankfully lacked the intensely expensive and fragile components of the 5S project. This one returned to a standard structure and engine while splurging on 10 double heat sinks and 6.5 tons of heavy ferrofibrous armor, which provided 128 points of protection. That's the same as 8 tons of standard plate if you were curious, so the needle didn't move on the overall protection. The more powerful 200 rated fusion engine finally pushed the Whitworth up to a 584 movement profile, at least tackling the mech's lingering issues with speed. The remaining mech mass was devoted to a rather traditional-looking loadout, but with a twist. The 2 ER medium lasers were split between the arms, aided by what I'm going to go ahead and declare an emotional support standard medium laser in the head. 2 medium-range missile 10 racks were installed into the side torsos, and their aim was improved with Apollo fire control systems. The 2 tons of included MRM ammunition were set into the Case 2 protected left torso. Normally, the MRMs would suffer a +1 to hit accuracy penalty, but the Apollo fire control system negates that, with the cost of, besides the weight of the system, a -1 on the cluster hit roll. The final product was an upgraded Whitworth that addressed multiple shortcomings. It's faster, hits a little harder in mid and short range, and is more durable thanks to the Case 2 protecting the MRM ammunition. Short of doing major reworkings, there's not much here that could be tweaked to make it any better. The Marians seemed happy with it, and surprisingly, word made it all the way back to the Draconis Combine, who negotiated a long-term contract for a percentage of each Whitworth 2H produced. Fans of House Kurita and the Whitworth can take a victory lap. Those most capable of wielding power were those least likely to desire it. To Alec, this was a self-evident truth, an article of faith, and faith was the force by which people lived. At the same time, also according to Tolstoy, the sole meaning of life was to serve humanity. Did that mean Alec had to serve it in the most self-sacrificing method available, or simply that he should always hold in mind his debt to the greater good? He sighed. The mills of philosophy could grind exceedingly fine. But safe from the worm, my spirit will survive. Destiny's Call, The Core, Battlecore Anthology, by Lauren L. Coleman. Before we go any further down the road, I did have an idea for a Whitworth 2C model, and this is a good time as any to give it a go. Keep in mind, this is totally unofficial and non-canon, but if you want to run to the YouTube comments and complain about it, then please go right ahead. I love the engagement. Seeking to revamp the DCMS, an order is placed with the Sea Foxes to take the classic Whitworth and create a ClanTech version. The Foxes get to work, and the following is presented to the Chancellor. The WTH-2C Whitworth starts with Clan Endo steel around a standard 200 fusion engine. An additional ton of mass is gained through the use of an extra light gyro. 10 inner sphere grade double heat sinks keep the mech cool, with the 2 outside the engine split between the side torsos for critical hit buffers. 7 tons of inner sphere ferrofibrous armor provides 125 points of protection. Additionally, a 5th jump jet was installed into the right torso, pushing the 2C's movement profile to 585. The weapons loadout is a nod to the original, with a pair of advanced tactical missile 6 launchers split between the side torsos, each fed from 2 tons of Case 2 protected ammunition. For close-range targets, 2 Clan medium pulse lasers split between the arms offered their accurate and powerful fire. Though short of the ideal 3 tons of ammo per launcher, 2 provides the Whitworth 2C with enough flexibility to act in a longer-range fire support role while still being able to launch high-explosive ammunition up close. The 10 double heat sinks are more than enough to handle all use cases except full jump jet leaps while alpha striking. Even then, it's just a single point into the red. The possible full damage at close range is up to 50, with 14 of that being the -2 improved accuracy medium pulse lasers. That's not too shabby for a mech that was once fresh meat for lighter foes. If you'd like to give the Whitworth 2C a try, I've included the record sheet for it and the Alpha Strike card in the video notes below. Go have fun. So why do we love the Whitworth? This is a tough one because it would be easy to speak poorly of it. However, looking at all the other options for classic 40-ton inner sphere battle mechs, you could actually do worse. The success or failure of the Whitworth in a fight is likely to boil down to the Mechwarrior's ability to stay out of the line of fire until a point of his or her choosing. Go in too early and you're risking taking too much fire too fast. Wait too long and you haven't done much except lob LRM-10 shots for minimal impact. Further down the timeline, there are some solid upgrades as well as a few wacky choices, including one for the Torians and an opportunity to find a long-lost RimWorld's Republic cache someday. While it may not always stand firmly on its feet, I think we can call the Whitworth friend. Do you have a favorite Whitworth variant down the timeline, or are you a Succession Wars purist? Let me know in the comments and we can keep the discussion going. Thanks as always for coming out today. If you think the video deserves it and you want to show your support, the easiest way to do that is to hit the like button, subscribe, and even leave a comment. All of these things make the YouTube algorithm happy. If you want to go one step further, direct support through Kofi or YouTube channel memberships are a great way to help ensure that the nonsense keeps flowing. Just a couple of bucks a month can make a big difference. I can't do this without you and I appreciate it. If you would like to join the nonsense on the MechFrog Discord server, we'd love to see you. I've included the link to the server in the video notes. It's the best way to find out what's coming next week, talk to BattleTech fans, share your awesome mech paint jobs, and otherwise hang out with some pretty awesome people. With that, I'll say have a great week, take care of yourself, and please go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.